coming to you from Nashville. So, welcome to my weekly live chat. My name is Aaron Apter. I'm a professional drummer here in Nashville if you're new tuning in. And what I do is every week I kind of donate about 30 to 45 minutes and answer a lot of questions that people have about living in Nashville, working in Nashville, if you can make a living here playing music, and what that whole process is like. And yeah, lately people have been asking quite a bit about money, and they've been curious about what Nashville musicians are making in terms of money, and how that pay can sometimes fluctuate depending on the gig, depending on the time of year, and depending on what you're doing. So I open the floor to everybody, but if anybody has any specific questions, man, just like hop on in. Hey, Mick, how you doing? I know Mick's he's overseas right now. If you're still in school, Mick, it might be a little bit late for you. It's probably, 10 or 11 where you're at. But yeah, we're here to answer all questions, any and all questions. This week, I kind of hit a special milestone on YouTube. I hit a 5,000, I mean, sorry, not 5,000, 1,000 viewers. And yeah, I was going to talk about that, but I also found that, yeah, that not as many people enjoy talking about YouTube as the people who create it. So I like to, if you want to, I can talk about that, but I'm going to keep it focused towards music. Hey, DH, how's it going? And right now, this is the time of year where things are really ramping up. Is basically like gigging every day, or picking and choosing what gigs I want to take. So coming up here in a couple weeks is going to be CMA Fest in Nashville, and that really is like a 7-day sprint of just playing around the clock. Hey, Joel, thank you. Thanks for the congratulations. And really, one thing I've been telling musicians here in Nashville, this is when you really have to start picking what gigs you want to do and picking what your focus is. And it all depends, like everyone has different goals and different needs, and just because I'm doing something doesn't mean somebody else should be doing something, and vice versa. So this is a really good time to like really assess what you want and what your goals are for the year. And so Mick asks questions. I have a question. Do you make money off of YouTube? So Mick, to answer your question, I recently got monetized. And so during my first week of monetization, I think I've made like 20 cents. So that's not even enough to buy a drop of coffee. And really, I've had people donate, which I appreciate so much, which I've been really thankful for. And that's also a lot of how music works here in Nashville. A lot of people tip. Whether you like it or not, a lot of people are playing for tips and living off of tips. A big part of my income is tips. And some days you can make, like, for a 4-hour gig, you can make $75. Some days you'll make $750. It's a really wild variance. But in terms of YouTube, I'll make like some sense, literally. Some of my viewers have been so kind and so fortunate to donate, which I sincerely appreciate from the bottom of my heart. And why I keep doing this is because, it's stuff that can help people out there. But also, I think of YouTube very much as a way of, one, advertisement, like letting people know I'm here, simply having a presence. And that's really helpful, and that's helped my career. But I've also used it as a way to give back to other people who are curious, who've had the questions that I've had about playing music, living in Nashville. And I find that I get repaid from my work on YouTube. It's not necessarily always financially, but in terms of exposure, in terms of meeting people, in terms of it opening doors for me. And I really think YouTube and music is a good example of what the future is like for musicians, where you can play music, and that's great, and that's a big part of it. That needs to be your focus, but doing other things to support your live music as well, or support, like, you have to market yourself, you have to promote yourself, you have to be your own videographer, graphic designer, you have to be like an entrepreneur now. And then music is like, you have to be able to play music, but then like at a certain point, it's not necessarily how good you are musically, it's about how well-oiled machine you are as an entrepreneur. Um, yeah, so that's to answer your question, Mick. And speaking of that, like I've also thought about YouTube coming up in terms of gigs. So I've been offered some road work, some touring work, and quite frankly, at this point, the money, if I'm going out on the road, the immediate money is not as good as it would be if I stayed in town. So I can go out on the road, not sleep in my bed, not eat the food I'm used to eating, like, eat gas station food, travel in a van, sleep in weird motels, hotels, and just travel. And you don't get paid to play music, you get paid to travel. But I'm going to be doing some more road work coming up because, for a few reasons, because I really like the people I'm working with and I like their music and I believe in it. And I think that ultimately that can lead to better and bigger things. But also with YouTube, that's another reason why I did YouTube, so I could document what it's like climbing up the ladder and how sometimes you have to go out and take a risk, including going out on the road and knowing, oh, I'm not going to be making as much money as I would in town. So how can I leverage this to, support my career, to help with growth? And I think if you don't always look at everything in terms of dollars and cents, but in terms of what can this gig do for me in terms of the big picture, not just in terms of my paycheck today, but will this help introduce me to a new audience? Will this help me break into a new scene? Hell, will I even get content of me playing on a stage with 5 or 10,000 people, which really adds to my legitimacy? And that counts. That really does count. And that also, you're getting exposure to people. And I don't want to be one of those people that says play for exposure, because, that's ridiculous. But you have to think about everything combined. So I'm just throwing out random numbers. This isn't what I'm making. But let's say I get offered $10,000 to do an in-town gig and $5,000. I've never been offered either or. To do an out-of-town gig in like a major stadium, I would probably do the $5,000 gig, because that's going to get me exposure. That's going to get me into that next level maybe. And just not showing up for the gig is not enough. It's like I have to show up to that gig, be prepared, meet people. Because also when you're on tour, you have a chance to meet people. You have to be really intentional, and it's hard work. But yeah, that's what I've been doing. So Elias says, what are you doing? Like, what is this about? You must be a drummer with all this in the background. Okay. Well, Elias, that's a keen observation. Yes, I play drums. I also play guitar, play piano. I write. I do a lot of different things, but drums are my main instruments. And really what I'm talking about here is just what it's like to live and work in Nashville as a musician. And what my experience has been like moving here 2 years ago and starting my career over from scratch again. And Mick, man, you should upload some of the footage of you playing. I would love to see it, seriously. But yeah, so Elias, you can also check out my other videos on, I talk about the journey of being a musician, from pay to what it's like playing on Broadway to the mental aspects. And what I do is every week I come on here and I like to talk with my audience and see if there's any questions I can answer, see if they have any feedback. And yeah, if anybody has any questions or any thoughts, please shoot it towards me. Because really, this is my favorite time of week where I get to really interact with the people. Some of the people tune into my live streams, which I really enjoy and appreciate. And just really wanting to give people an inside look at what playing and living in Nashville is like. So Elias says he's been playing his entire life. Yeah, it's yeah, and I also play keyboard and guitar, and like me, I've been playing drums my entire life. I find that guitar is a different language, but I also have a video coming up about why all drummers should know chords, like all should know something about harmony, because again, I think we're not just playing a rhythm, but we need to like know the structure of a song. We need to know the ins and outs of it. Doesn't mean you need to hop up on stage and play, but for all the gigs I have, I literally write out the charts, and I write out the Nashville number system charts. And if anybody has any questions about those, I'm happy to answer how charts are written out here. I actually have some examples on my ConvertKit page, which is actually on this. I think there's a link at the bottom of this video description where you can see some of the Nashville number charts and the charts that we all use here. So you have one question. I'm self-taught on the drums, and I'm really lost about how far I've come, so I have no clue if I'm a beginner or an intermediate drummer. So that's a good question, Elias. My question is, why does it matter what the label is? That's an honest question, and I ask that to everybody. Like, why does it matter what your label is as a musician? Like, if you are a pro, if you are an amateur, intermediate, that's what I really want to ask people, because it's what does it matter? I've had people think that they aren't qualified to be a musician because they haven't gone to school for it. I've also had people who have gone to school for music and they are overly confident in their qualifications. And really, it's very much like being an athlete. It's not about a label, it's about how you perform. So like, Elias, man, you should upload it. Yeah, I mean, feel free to shoot me a message at some time. Can't really watch you right now, but maybe I'll get a chance to in a second. So, DH, you're strongly considering moving to Nashville at the end of 2024. Do you have any advice on cheap places to stay short-term while trying to secure a more long-term place? Good question. Mick, man, shoot me a video you playing, Mick. I would love to see it as well. So DH asks about moving to Nashville. And so again, I'm going to answer every question like it all depends. Like, what's your budget? What's your goal? What are your wants and needs? What are you looking to accomplish? What's your runway? So it's some people get into town and it takes them years to break in and make money. Some people start working right away. So if you're coming to Nashville is it's going to be very different for everybody. What I tell people if they're coming to Nashville, it's like, have a plan before you get here, but then also have that plan just totally blow up. Because really, you just need to get here and hit the streets and start meeting people, start getting a feel. If you can connect with some musicians, that's great. One thing I've told people, try looking at a place called furnishedfinder.com. So that it has some short-term furnished places. It's kind of like Airbnb. It was cheaper. And Mick, if you just tag me in a video. If you find me on Instagram, you can tag me in a video there, or you can just tag me in a video on YouTube. Just post it, and I'll get to seeing it eventually. So DH, to continue with answering your question, it's I would say look at place, Instagram, Mick. I would say look at places like Furnished Finder, maybe consider an Airbnb, and real estate is always moving left and right here. So rentals are always going up and down. Prices, Nashville is really booming and growing. If you have a chance to, I would suggest coming here for a week or two, saving up to do that, looking around town and having the intent that, okay, I'm going to find a place to live. And if you're curious about my Instagram, it's right on there's a link on my YouTube profile page. If you follow me on YouTube, you'll find my Instagram. I think it's Aaron After Music, but there's a link right on my profile page. So coming to Nashville, there are places like Antioch you can find, which I think is it's about 15-20 minutes away from downtown. I would say look at someplace about 15 to 20 minutes from downtown if you want to. It's going to be a little bit more affordable there. But again, things are moving so quickly here in Nashville, so I can't fully, I can't say absolutely go to this place. Some people luck out and find some places. Some people look for a roommate. Some people want to live alone. So yeah, DH, I'm gonna start doing Zoom consult calls, DH. So if you want to shoot me a message, we can hop on that. Just AaronAfterMusic@gmail.com. Elias, thank you so much for subscribing. And again, like when people message me, I always try to get back to them. One thing I do, another reason why I do the weekly live chats is because I get a lot of comments on the video and I try to really respond to all of them. But also one thing I like to really do is like kind of silo my time online and on YouTube and on Instagram and Facebook. So a lot of people don't know this, but I really don't keep Instagram or Facebook on my phone. I put it on sometimes to if I need to upload a story or something like that, but then I take it right off because Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, like checking all that stuff throughout the day while I'm out and about the world, it really doesn't serve me and it gets in my way mentally. So I kind of keep that off and I check in the beginning of the day, check at the end of the day. And I used to keep it on my phone because I would get a lot of gigs through Instagram and Facebook. And I still can do that. And if you're new to town, you can get gigs through Instagram and Facebook. There's, I think it's important to establish a social media presence when you are in town. And that's one of the reasons why I started doing YouTube. And so I've gotten to a point where I have enough connections and enough work that I want to focus more on the gigs where people, they just don't want a drummer right now. They want me for a gig and they don't need a response right away. Like I just had someone call me today about a gig in December and we're gonna talk about that today. So a lot of the gigs I'm doing now, some of them are like booked out like months or two in advance. And there's still gigs that I'm doing just kind of like off the fly. But again, that's one of the reasons why I also keep just Instagram and Facebook off my phone, because I find when I'm using those, I'm focusing on the gigs that are, you're gonna get some money and you might make some connections, but the quality of those gigs it's always going to be a little bit of a crapshoot in terms of the quality of pay, the quality of musicians, the quality of music. Yeah. So DH, yeah, drop me a line if you have any questions. Who else has any questions? Joel, if you're watching, letting you know I'm going to be in Arizona in June. I'm going to be out there for a week with Cara Granger. We're going to be doing some tour dates out there. So perhaps you can come out to a show. I would love to meet you in person if you're watching here, Joel. Yeah, Elias, man, if no one's else asking a question, man, fire away. If you have a question, let me know. That's what I'm just here to really provide insight to people on what it's like, musically and professionally here in Nashville, or just working as a professional musician. So Elias, feel free to fire away. But also if anybody else has any questions, feel free to chime in. Yeah, and so I'm also going to be, I'm selling some books here coming up in the week where I'm going to be making a book of charts for people to use. And so Elias says he wants to make a living off of drumming, but he's not good enough. Hey Casey, how you doing? So how do I handle contracts with venues? That's another great question, Casey. And that, again, it all depends. Elias, I'll get to your question in a second. That all depends. If you're a side musician, or are you the front person? Are you the artist? And here in Nashville, I primarily work as a side person, and I do not deal with the venues. I usually leave that up to the artists. And, at this level, like, there's just a lot of real handshake agreements. And that means you can get burned sometimes. Like, I've been burned before. Like, we've all been burned. And I've thought about like wanting to have ironclad contracts. And sometimes I'm waiting till I get a little bit further up the chain. But like, yeah, there's also things like if you're playing a honky tonk in town, you're basically playing for tips. Or you're like playing for a split of the door. But one thing I'm always asking anytime an artist pays me, or is like they're saying, hey, are you free on this day? I say, what do you got? What are the details? And like really knowing how much I get paid is going to be really important. Yeah, and with artists, like if I'm playing a gig with them and if they are like a gig or two behind, I give them some grace based on my relationship with them. But after a certain point, I'm like, hey, I would love to play for you, but I wouldn't feel comfortable until like, we settle up. Can you do that for me? And if not, I get it. I just may not be the person for your gig. And I've had people short me on pay before, and it's been upsetting. Um, and I've also thought, is it worth it me making a stink over like $25 or $50? Uh, and the principle really bothers me. But then sometimes if I look at it as like, okay, I just know like not to work with that person again. And if they call me again, I'm not going to say, no, you stiffed me on the money last time. I usually say, thanks for asking. I'm unavailable for this one, but thank you. And just keep it moving, even though that person stiffed me on some money, because I find that making enemies, or like, even if you call people out and they're bullshit, you have to pick and choose your times to do that. So yeah, that's how I would say. Casey, if you have any more specific questions, let me know about that. So Elias is like, you want to be the best in the world, but I can't afford studio microphones to make people pay attention, so I have to work a 9 to 5 to do that, but then I won't be able to practice enough. Yeah, so really, and I think a lot of people face this hurdle about if they are good enough to make a living at playing music, or if they can. And how many drummers are there in this world? How many drummers are there making a living at playing music? How many guitarists are there out there? There's only one best, right? And you don't have to be the best. I always tell people I would rather work with a C+ player and an A person than an A player and a C+ person. So if you think about like, okay, making relationships with people, being really good and easy to work with, and being adequate enough at your instruments, that goes a lot further than you think, a lot further. And I hate saying those things because I love playing music so much, and I take pride in practicing my ass off and being over-prepared for a gig. But it's also a lot more than just practicing. It's really just, am I prepared? Do I know all the count-offs? Do I show up in the right clothing? Music is not necessarily just about how good you can play, it's about relationships. So Elias, I would really focus on making relationships, seriously. Making relationships and then just doing it, consistently every day, like finding small inroads to make with people. And it doesn't happen in a day, really. I literally played my whole life, and I had to take 10 years off of playing to recover from injuries, and I started over again. And it's like I'm still learning. So it's really in every, like, a nonstop thing. So Smoke That Crack Rock said, I used to want to be a professional musician or tech. After a while, I quit after realizing it wasn't for me, not because it was necessarily a bad career. I just wanted to, decide on a different career. And that's a great move. Like, I say there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Like, it's not for everybody. I spent nearly 10 years out of music. Long story short, I was in a bad accident, nearly lost my arm, then started, as a result, I rehabbed the hell out of it. I started racing triathlons, Ironmans, as a way to like rehab my body and prove people wrong. And then I started going back to school for like medical school, and I wanted to be a physical therapist. And that's why I moved to Nashville, to be that for musicians. And after a year of doing that, I said, I just want to play music. But it's okay to like hop out of music, because sometimes it's not for everybody, and it can grind you down. And I am, like, this past year has been really tough for me. Like, I've had to work my ass off musically. I'm tired. Like, setting up cameras for YouTube videos, doing YouTube lives. It's exhausting. Traveling is exhausting. Playing music is really, it's like not just a career, it's a lifestyle, and it's not for everybody, and there's nothing wrong with that. I find people who are more fulfilled by working a job and having security financially and being in the same place and playing when they want to. So there's nothing wrong with that. So Casey, you play in Wyoming, and we're always wondering, if we book events, should we have a paper agreement or a handshake good enough? Haven't been burned yet. So Casey, and Elias, thank you so much for listening, of course. That's why I love helping people out and chatting with people. Casey, again, so I'm a side man, right? And I've been the front person, the contact person for gigs, and everyone's going to have a different take on this one, right? So let's think about, Casey, like, let's think about what are your goals as a a musician in Wyoming? Are you trying to have your small cover band? Are you trying to climb up the ladder to get bigger, better gigs? You just want to keep playing? Are you doing it just for the fun of it? Are you doing this to make money and make a career? And then like you have to think about it like it's really about, just like with, I say with musicians, like focusing on creating relationships with people. Really, if you are running a band, it's like you are creating relationships with clients. You are essentially running a business and you are trying to market your business to other businesses. And I hate to sound so unartistic about it, because really to me, the most important thing at the end of the day is playing music. That's all I care about. And I found that in order to be able to play music, I need to be really business minded. Like I have to think about, when I'm on a gig, I'm basically like client relations, I'm customer relations. And if I'm playing a corporate gig and I'm a sideman, I still am the face of that band and I still have to talk with the clients in a very professional way. So Casey, I would say like think about your gigs and your situation with your small cover band. Like what, if are you playing like a gig for like $400 for like an hour? And if you get burned on it, yeah, you might get burned on like $400. Everyone in your band might miss out on $100. And that would suck. But like, really at the end of the day, it's if you call people out on it, they would probably be pretty upset, which you would be right to do. But think about it as a way of like, okay, if you're in this for the long term, building relationships. And then like once you get to like, I've always found like if I'm doing a wedding or a corporate event, I would have a contract and I'd be like, this is just so that we have everything in writing so we're all on the same page. And it's just to protect both of us. Is that cool with you? Is it okay if I do that? Do you have thoughts on this? And I find that talking to people that way sometimes really helps. And I think there's also a skill in talking to people. And oftentimes we hear the phrase, you want to talk to people the way you want to be spoken to. And I would say that's incorrect. I would say you want to talk to people the way they want to be spoken to. And some people, like, they really focus on how you talk to them and how it makes them feel. And they want to like understand everything about it. Some people just like want the bottom line and to keep it moving. They just want the facts. And like really being able to read a person to understand what's going on with that. And so Casey, to expand on your point, you're in it for fun, but you're looking to gain an audience, getting bigger gigs. You just want to be smart as you grow. And that's a great attitude. And think about like where you're kind of like on a journey here, right? And I would say this is the same for like a musician, like climbing up the professional ranks. A lot of people think when you're climbing up a ladder, it's like you go from one rung like all the way to the top. It's like this big leap, but really it's a bunch of smaller steps. And if you think like every small step along the way, like, okay, what can I do to protect myself along the way? And let's say you do get burned on a gig. That's just like one little misstep and you know not to work with those people again. And you learn from that experience. You learn that, okay, this is what we do and what we don't do. And also like think about every time you're going out playing a gig, it's like an audition for another gig, whether you are a band or whether you're a musician. It's an audition. You never know who's going to be in the audience. It's advertising. You have a chance to record yourself, to listen back and see what you're doing good and what you can improve upon. But also then you can share that with people, letting people know you're out there. And that's why I started doing YouTube. That's why I started live streaming some gigs, just to let people know I'm there. And I've been doing this for a year, and in a year I've made about 27 cents. But I started gaining an audience and started getting other opportunities based on my YouTube. Now YouTube isn't so I view that as advertising for my services. So the worst case scenario, Casey, you do a gig and you get burned on it, you at least can use that as material to share with people, share with your audience. But think about okay, it's a chance to build your reputation. And that goes for any gig, like band or musician. Now, when you get to a certain point, like on certain gigs, like if somebody like wants me to book me for like a month or two ahead of time, and for a certain amount of time, I'm going to want to be paid a certain amount up front, and kind of know what the stipulations are, and yeah, if it's a union gig or not, and that's a whole nother conversation. So we got time for about one or two more. Would love to, if anybody has any questions or just thoughts, feedback they want to share, stuff they want to see on the channel, stuff they don't want to see on the channel. Because I've been really sitting down and writing out some plans about what I want to do for this channel, and what I want to do for people, like what people want to see. And because I hit 1,000 followers, I'm going to be buying a computer in the near future. I've been editing, shooting all my videos on a phone. And I said, if I'm serious about this, I won't buy a computer till I get 1,000 viewers. So I'm going to buy a computer soon. Yeah, but that means we're going to get more content coming out here. So I really am curious what people would like to see. And Casey, you are very welcome. Yeah, let me know like what questions you have. I was actually talking with another musician the other day, and I was saying about how sometimes I want to put stuff out on YouTube and I find it really interesting, but my audience doesn't. So like, I really need to what does my audience want to hear and see? So Casey, one more quick question. Have you ever been approached about copy infringement playing covers? Do the artists you play with carry licenses, or do the venues cover that? So yeah, the venues cover that. And so any place you're playing music, yeah, they need to have an ASCAP and BMI license for their establishment. And that's on the venue, not on you. So that's a great question. Yeah. And what's the worst that can happen? So I've never had anybody tell me to stop playing music because of copyright infringement. Sometimes videos get flagged on YouTube for copyright infringement, or like, this is copyrighted material, you can't monetize it. And I'm like, well, I'm not really making money off of YouTube anyways, aside from 27 cents. Yeah, so do we have any other questions? Any thoughts? Anything you folks would like to see coming up here? What you would like to see more, what you would like to see less of? Because really, this channel is for everybody, and I want to answer as many questions as possible, but also like find a way to serve the people who watch this channel. Because again, say it all the time, my goal is to be the resource that I never had coming up as a musician, as a new musician in town. And also like, yeah, I really like to, if there's new musicians in town, like hit me up. Because I like to give as much time as I can, but it's starting to be like, I'm starting to get super busy, and I really can't always meet in person with people. So doing this weekly live chat, I tell people, hey, if you want to chat with me, like I'm doing this weekly live chat, but usually the rest of the time I'm like out on the road playing gigs. Just played last night with Aaron Nichols. We did some original music at the Underdog. I got some video from that. It's been getting, yeah, shooting all of my gigs it's something else, let me tell you that. And managing all of that, I literally have 30 terabytes of footage from just this year alone, and like I've posted maybe about 5% of it. Just going through all of it, it's quite the journey. But yeah, if we have no more questions, thank you so much for tuning in. Yeah, if you please like, follow, subscribe, comment on the videos. And again, I tried to respond to every comment on here, and I'm really appreciative of all my followers. And I'll be back here next week at 3:30. Yeah, Casey, thank you so much for watching. And DH, yeah, thank you as well. Oh, yeah. And so I do, sometimes I put the talkback mic in on my live feeds, because I really want to give people a behind the scenes, like this is what it's really like. This is how the sausage gets made. And you can hear, so the talkback mics on some of my live feeds, you can't hear that in the audience. But I want people out there to like get a good concept of what's going on. And, so like if I'm doing a gig with Aaron, sometimes he'll be like, yeah, play this a couple clicks faster, or he'll call songs like, I don't know that song. or like maybe someone else in the band doesn't know that song and I have a chart up for it and I'll like, yell them the chord changes for that. But I have a live feed from my gig, a drum cam feed from my gig this past Friday. And so there's lots of banter and you can see what it's like back in that drum cage. So thank you so much for watching. I look forward to speaking with everyone next week and have a great and safe, happy Memorial Day weekend.